Come on, Alavachi. What concerns he has? I want to make sure he's the most relaxed. Let me know what's going through your head right now.
I'll tell you what's about to go through his head. They shot through that computer screen. Depending on how far zoomed in he was, just above the hairline, they did what needed to be done. You can't have cops and not have some level of liability. So next, let's talk about how this applies to you and how you can account for and train for this mechanical offset inside your house. Hey guys, today we're gonna be talking about the Fort Myers Bank of America attempted robbing and takeaways that I don't see anyone talking about and how they apply to you in a home defense or self-defense situation. So let's go ahead and watch that video. If you haven't seen this yet, this is pretty crazy. And I'll probably have to blur additional stuff out from what they've already blurred. All right, so we have the hostage taker. I'm gonna go ahead and pause it. We got the hostage taker behind these two victims here. And the hostage taker, his face is not blurred, and you'll see why later on. He is no longer with us. But the victims are to his left and to his right. And then you'll get another angle in a second, and you'll see where the police are. This is a wild situation and extremely high risk. All right, so we got the police out there in the lobby. Looks like they're anywhere from, it's hard to say, you know, the perspective of things, but it looks like they're anywhere from 10 to 15 yards away. And then we have the circle on this monitor, and you'll see why in a second. All right, so we got the whole SWAT team. You got the sniper that's here with no helmet on. He's got his rifle resting on the buddy in front of him. So his buddy, I'm gonna pause for a second. His buddy has got his hands on his shoulder and he's resting the rifle on his buddy, which is already really sketch because you'll see how much the rifle is gonna be moving in a second, even right before he takes the shot. But what looks like is happening here is they're trying to create some level of concealment because you have this guy in front. And you'll notice that someone's gonna like pull him over to get a little bit closer. Right there, you see his hand. It looks like he's pulling this guy over. So they're trying to create a little hole for this sniper to shoot through. And I think they're trying to do it in a way that prevents the hostage taker from seeing what's going on. And you can see in the background, I'll circle it in the video, but you can see in the background, you can see the hostage taker's head. And you can't see much other than from his eyes up. And since this is a live situation, that's gonna be constantly changing and he's gonna dip his head down, bring it back up. The hostages are gonna be moving around and you'll see what happens. So he dips it down. He's kind of going behind the hostage.
Let me know what's going through your head right now. What concerns he has?
Let me know what's going through your head right now. I'm telling you what's about to go through his head. All right, he just shot him. So now we're gonna get a different angle. All right, so they shot him. And if you'll notice, the round went through the computer monitor, okay? I'm gonna back it up a little bit so you can see that again. The round went through the computer monitor, hostage taker's dead. I'm gonna have to blur that part out because police activity didn't blur that out completely. I saw inside the guy's head. So we got debris from him on the desk here and all over the floor. You can see what's blurred in red. But also on the background, we have debris on the wall. Now, I don't know if the debris on the wall is from him. I don't know if that's human debris or if it's debris from the computer because they shot through that computer screen. Now, I'm gonna let it play through all the way. So after they shoot him, they come up here, they throw a couple diversionary devices as good measure, check him. He's no longer with us. So they flow in here. And again, I was trying to count the paces and how many steps it took them to get to that point to figure out how far away they are, but it's really hard to see. It looks like they're about 10 to 15 meters away. So let's talk about this. All right, there's a couple training takeaways that apply directly to you in a self-defense context. Let's go to the range and demonstrate, and I want to see if I can replicate what happened and then show you why the principles of what happened are important to you in a self-defense context. So let's go to the range. Okay, we just got to the range and we have our targets set up. We have our bank robber. I don't know why Ron Swanson off Parks and Recreation decided to rob a bank today.
Not to worry, I have a permit.
This just says I can do what I want.
But we got the bank robber and then we have our hostage 1 and then hostage 2. This is a rough setup from what I saw in the video. And then if you back up a little bit more, we have our computer monitor or our piece of cardboard. And again, in the video, it's kind of hard to see the distances because sometimes the perspective of things change or look different in a video. But it seems to be they were about 3 yards away from that computer monitor. And we back up even further, and this is where we're gonna be shooting from. So this is 10 yards from the target. I don't know exactly how far away they were when they took the shot, but it looks like they were about 10, maybe 15 yards away. So we're going to take a shot at the target and see what happens, all right? And then we're gonna talk about what I think happened in the video and kind of do some lessons learned or some takeaways for you as a citizen, because what we're gonna talk about in this video doesn't just apply to law enforcement, it also applies in a civilian context, and I'll explain in a second. So let's go ahead and load up. I'm gonna take one shot at the hostage taker, and then I'm going, hold on. Let me get my AirPro real quick, just a second.
12 seconds later.
I like to double up anytime I'm in an indoor range because it echoes a lot, and I would rather keep my hearing as long as I can. So I'm gonna take one shot at the hostage taker, and I'm gonna aim about where I would aim from this range if there was no computer monitor in the way, and we're gonna see what happens. All right, so we're loaded up. Here we go. Safety on. All right, let's go check it out. So first off, we can see that our computer monitor got hit. And in the video, it looks like the actual bullet hole in the monitor in the video is about that far down. And let's go check out the hostage taker. So right there, that's in the T box, right? You got the eyes and the nose, you draw a triangle, not a T, but it's an upside down triangle. So that's a really good shot. He would have had a horrible day. He would be dead right now. But let's talk about why this occurred and why the bullet went through the monitor. The reason for that is something called mechanical offset. And the mechanical offset of your gun is the distance between your sight line and the bore line. So since those things are not together, then we have this offset or this height over bore. I couldn't think of the term. We have the height over bore. And so with a rifle, you have to zero at a specific distance. So when you zero at a specific distance, what you're actually doing is you're canting the barrel up. And so what happens is the bullet goes up into the sight line and crosses the sight line at a certain distance. That's actually called your zero. And then as gravity takes over, it falls back into that sight line because your sight line is perfectly straight, whereas the bullet follows a ballistic trajectory, right? It's not a laser yet. So for distances closer than your zero, you're gonna have this offset and you have to account for that offset. And what I actually think happened in that video was that sniper, and he was using a bolt gun with a really high-powered optic. I don't know what power the optic was, but it was much more high power than this aim point. But he was probably really zoomed in on the hostage taker. I would venture to say that he may have not even seen the computer monitor, depending on how far zoomed in he was, because from where I was standing, the monitor was like right here. So I could see the eyes, and I put my dot in this area, and then it impacted right there because of that mechanical offset. But even with accounting for that mechanical offset that I have, it still went through the monitor because that was closer to me than the hostage taker. So this is important to know. It's important to train for, even if you're not in law enforcement and you're a civilian who intends to use an AR-15 type rifle with an optic, or any sight for that matter. Hopefully you have a sight on your gun, but you intend to use that gun for home defense, self-defense, or whatever. So let's go back and see if we can fix this, and let's see if we can shoot over the monitor, but also still hit the hostage taker. Again, Ron Swanson has fallen a long way. He must have had a bad day at the office.
April, could you call maintenance, please?
All right, this time I'm gonna aim even higher and see if I can hit basically in the forehead area, okay? So let's try this out. All right, go check it out. So we got no holes in the computer monitor. And all right, so just above the head, right? And I actually folded this over, the picture here, it kind of would go up. So it would probably hit in the head. I kind of want to see if I can bring that down a little bit to get it closer to the forehead. And quick side note, I understand the officers in that video, they had to make that decision on the fly. They had no chance for a warm-up. They had no chance for a do-over. So none of this is an attempt to armchair quarterback and say, oh, you messed up, you shouldn't have done that. I'm simply trying to explain what I think happened in the heat of the moment. And again, they saved those hostages' lives and they did what needed to be done. You can't have cops be cops and not have some level of liability. If you're a department that's trying to completely get rid of liability, then you need to just completely get rid of your department because you can't do policing without some level of liability. So let's try this again. And again, I'm floating that dot over the head. It makes it a little bit harder to figure out where my actual impact is gonna be. And that would be even more challenging if you have a magnified optic. So if you're 10 yards and in with a magnified optic, that head of the threat is gonna swallow the entire window, or your viewing window inside that optic. There we go. All right, that one felt a little bit better. All right, we got no impacts on the computer monitor. There we go. All right, so this one was just above the hairline. It's not the T-box, but if you get shot from that distance with a 5.56, especially like a 308 or whatever they were shooting, you're gonna have a really bad day. It would probably scalp him or canoe his head in. But ultimately, that's what I wanted to demonstrate, and that's what I wanted to share with you that I think was happening. So next, let's talk about how this applies to you as a citizen who intends to use a rifle like this for home defense, and how you can account for and train for this mechanical offset inside your house. Okay, we are back at my house. So we got Ron here. Ron's, again, had a bad day at the office, and he's decided to kick in my front door, and he's standing right here. And I just happen to be walking around with my AR-15. And we're gonna say I'm 3 yards away. So this is about 3 yards away, and I'm going to attempt to engage him. The first time I do it though, I'm gonna aim right here, okay? So imagine if there's a triangle, an upside down triangle between the eyes and the nose. I'm gonna try to aim right there, and we're gonna see where the impact of this round goes. And we're gonna talk about how to account for that and how to train for that. Here we go. Right there. So it hit him in the chin area, but assume really bad day for him.
I'll die the way I'll die.
But assume I were to aim right here, like say in the stress of the incident, which if something like this happened, it would be extremely stressful, and you're not gonna be as accurate as you would be on the range. So suppose I were to aim right here, or whenever the round went off, my reticle dot was right here or right here. Let's see where the round would impact in that situation. And once again, it still impacted him. The neck would have gone down, so it would have impacted him in these muscles of the neck, but it's not as combat effective as if I would have hit him right there, or if I would have hit him anywhere inside of this area. So now let's figure out, how do I get my round to impact in this area? And real quick, talk about the device I'm using. This is the Mantis Blackbeard X. It's a dry fire training device for the AR-15. They also have some for the AK-47s, the SCARs, and some other rifles. I can't remember all the different variants they have. But basically, it just resets the hammer each time, so it allows you to dry fire without having to cycle the action like you would have to do if you had a bolt carrier group and a charging handle installed. And this is the battery, and then you have the device in here. It's also safe, so you don't have to worry about having a negligent discharge inside your house, which would be a horrible situation. But it also fires a laser out of the bore. And some of you watching may wonder, okay, well, that's a laser, but that's not what a bullet does, because a bullet is under the influence of gravity, whereas a laser goes straight. And you're correct. However, for certain distances, I would say 50 yards and in, 25 yards and in, the path of the bullet can be approximated as a straight line. So let's talk about how we're gonna get the impact of that round, or the impact of that laser, in that T-box, which is the upside down triangle between the eyes and the nose. So that time impacted about right here, and I had to aim right here. So literally the top of this paper is where I had to aim for. I'm gonna demonstrate that again. I know you guys can't see my optic, but you'll just have to trust me, that's where I'm putting the dot. And the reason that's happening is, once again, the mechanical offset. So if I were to take my gun and I were to put it up here to the paper, you see that the top of the paper I have in line with the center of the optic. And then where the round was impacting, you have this distance between the center of the optic and the barrel. Where the round was impacting was right here where my thumb is, which is exactly the distance between, or about the distance between, the center of the optic and the bore line. Another way to make sense of this mechanical offset is to imagine if my muzzle was touching the target. My optic reticle is about right here. So you see that distance. If I move back a little bit, there's still gonna be an offset. I move back a little bit more, there's still an offset. And I keep moving back, and that offset will always be present until I get to the distance that I zero at, which is the distance where the trajectory of the bullets and your sight line converge. If you wanna train for this, you can take a measuring tape in your house, measure off some distances, maybe figure out what the maximum distance is in your house, figure out some distances that you may encounter in a home defense scenario. Say you have a stronghold position that you plan to be at to defend yourself and your family.
Hello.
You figure out what distances those are, and then you go to the range with those distances, maybe 12 meters, it may be 7 meters, it may be 17 meters. And you set the target up at that distance and you shoot at that distance. And you figure out what that mechanical offset's gonna be. And you do that enough times and build up muscle memory so that when it happens, you're not aiming right here or here and then not hitting where you're trying to hit. Another way you can do that is you can buy this device, the Blackbeard X by Mantis, and you can train in your house in real time, safely, without having to worry about shooting a hole in your house or your neighbor's house. And you can train for those mechanical offsets. You can set targets up all around your house, and you can pretend to be SWAT or whatever, and pretend like, okay, what would happen if someone was at the back door and I had to shoot them? That mechanical offset to my back door, since my back, you can't see it, but my back door is much further away, is much smaller than the mechanical offset I have to cope with right here. So take your gun, train with it. Don't just assume that it's like a video game, because it's not a video game. You can't just point and shoot at everything. You have to account for that. I hope this video was helpful. And also, if it's your first time to the channel, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button down below, and like if you like the video. And if you have any questions, please comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, train to a higher standard.